that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody. Welcome back to the Sundered Nation Trilogy by Von Roycroft, who's been very gracious to respond to most of my DMs when I've talked to him during my reading of this book, which for you it's been a wee bit since I actually sat down and read this. You know me, maybe you don't. If you don't know me, I'm Alex, and I like to often upload my videos massively ahead of schedule. For me, it is October. For you, we're already into 2026, so... Anyway, point being, Von Roycroft is or Roycroft, I don't know how like Laura Croft, I don't know. But he's a very, very kind man, and he appreciates the fact that I haven't read it, and I appreciate the fact that he'd respond at all, so... I'm doing this review because I review every book I read, pretty much. It helps me power through a book if I'm not liking it, and if I'm liking a book, I mean... I get to talk about it, so regardless, it really helps me push through finishing books because I get to talk about it with everyone, positive or negative. Typically, I will say, full disclosure, if I don't like a book, I will tell you as such. Like, I definitely think if it is a well-known author who makes millions of billions of dollars a year, whatever, or a book that's very old where the author's long dead, if I didn't enjoy work, I'm going to be brutally honest about it. If it's an indie, self-publishing author, I'm probably not going to be a jerk about it. I'll probably be as polite as possible. But I'll never not tell my opinion. I will say it how it is, and maybe that'll make me friends, and maybe it won't, but you will always get honesty from me. I really enjoyed this book. I do have some quibbles that we will get into in spoilers, but by and large, I do enjoy this book, and I definitely have, over the past couple months, been very much consuming a lot of real literature. Like I've been reading a lot of Hemingway or such and such, and Cormac McCarthy, and it's definitely opened my heart to bigger and wider things in terms of beyond just fantasy. And Harold Bloom has came into the brain, and I definitely want stuff that I want to participate and interact with art that is going to not just entertain, but be impactful into your life. And there's nothing wrong with being entertained, but I definitely want more than that oftentimes. And I think this does that adequately well. Like I said, I have some quibbles, but those by and large are just more preference. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the text. There's just certain things that I would have maybe elaborated on or spent more time on, but it's not my story. So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the text, but I will give my subjective opinions as we move through it. I do think the prose is adequate. I think at times it could be quite beautiful, depending on who's talking. Other times it can, for those who have followed me a long time, feel like a typical Star Wars Expanded Universe novel. Not horrible by any means, but not fantastic. But when it shines, it really shines. We, again, are in this world, which is sort of a mirror universe to our own. We have, instead of the Goths, we have the Gotari and the Scalani. So many, I think Philip Chase, with his Way of Dan trilogy, he has I forget what he calls his group, but it's very much the sort of like tribal peoples that is in so many fantasy that I read, from Karsa Orlong or Conan the Barbarian, or even with for you, just a few videos back with the Prince of Nothing and Aspect Emperor series by R. Scott Baker, you have the Skelvendi, and Scalani Skelvendi is very, very similar. It's funny how that happens, I just think it's interesting, the similar archetypes. But what I love about this world and what makes it very refreshing is that we're not dealing. It is, in a sense, fantastical, but you could also just say it's entirely in people's heads. We have seen no concrete proof that the supernatural exists in this setting. It very well could, but there's no concrete proof that it does. There's no magic, nothing crazy. It is mostly just an alternative history world with Gotari and Escalani kind of replacing the Gothic people that would later, bother Rome. And instead of Rome, we have, well, we'll get into that. Because this is very much where the world kind of opens up into a wider realm. Because we were very much self-contained in the first book to only dealing with sort of these tribes and their roaring feud and the rise of Valdon into a hero, villain. Don't know. But that was mainly what the first book was contained and focused on. This book expands. We get way more of this world than we did in the first book, and that's very interesting. We get a lot of new characters, and a lot of them steal the show like that. Urias probably being the key example there of somebody who just pops into this book for the very first time and immediately steals your heart. And the birth of a character who's been writing little excerpts since book 1. So I think that's very exciting. Again, I will say preference-wise, I'm no prude. But, and I think the difference is, and this may have to do with romance fiction as well, to not be too crass. No matter what your religious or non-religious beliefs are, it doesn't really matter. When it comes to certain sites on the internet, especially when it comes to men, romantic love and lust are two very different things, especially concerning men. It's not the same thing for women. Women are abundantly different in that respect. Men can get their rocks off while feeling nothing personal about it. Women can, it's a bit harder for them. Men can be emotional and add that to the aspect, but they don't have to. I say all this because of the way that a novel works. We are inside these people's heads. We spend time with these people. So this may actually be a massive positive to you, and I'll leave that to you to decide. But because you spend so much time with these people, because you start to feel so strongly about these characters, when certain explicit sexual scenes come up, and I'm not saying like it's crazy or anything, but when these romantic scenes come up, I feel like I know these people. Again, massive positive. I feel like these people could be my friends. So when I start to see them in my mind, in the text, start to do certain things, I feel like I'm intruding on something that I should not be a witness to. And it is only because of the power of storytelling and how much they feel real. Whereas if you watch something on the internet, typically the acting's bad and you have no emotional attachment involved with that. It's just physical. It is, you can't do that with a novel. So those scenes, and maybe that's entirely the point, but it makes me feel like I'm intruding on something I shouldn't be a witness to. So I usually skim over those parts. That might be a major positive for you and why you should read these books. But I think it is proper to forewarn that it's not start kissing passionately and fade to black. It is very, no, we're gonna mention the grinding, the thrusting, the putting your mouth around a certain object, just kind of explicit. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a story you want to tell. I'm just forewarning you that that is a consequence of reading these books. But it's easily enough to just skim past it and get the overall gist of what's going on. I don't think whether you skip those sections, you're really missing anything from the text in terms of story beats or character moments necessarily. So I think that's fine. But we do get a massive expansion in this world. We get a big push from Valdon and what he's doing. We get a lot of character development with Elaine and Valdon's relationship. And I really don't know where the third book will leave off, but I'm very interested to find out. But we expand into the Empire. We get to see more of this world of Pantea or Pantia, and more of this empire that, you know, is across the seas and has an emperor and all this stuff. Very much, again, surrogate for Rome. So what will that all coalesce to in the final book? Will Valdon become the emperor of the gnome world? Will he become Leto the Second? Will he become an ultimate villain? I guess we have to read Destiny's Doom to find out, which we definitely will. But, like I said, there's a lot of new characters that are really enjoyable, and of course, a lot of the old characters coming back are incredible. I'm glad we got Urias back; he was incredible. Valdon is definitely going to piss you off in this book, but that's part of the point. So, but I called it from book one that this was not a positive direction he was going. But then it's a matter of fate too. Can he subvert it, or is by trying to enact it, he very much is just creating a self-fulfilling prophecy? I don't know. But those are overall my vague, non-spoiler thoughts. I did enjoy the book immensely. And in certain parts, it really did touch my heart. I think I'd do the same for you if you give it a shot. So, if you liked the first one, I think you're going to like this one a lot more. I think everything from the first book is just improved upon. So, I do highly recommend this. I'm going to get into some spoilers if you don't want that. There's the door. There's 4 parts in this, there's 4 parts in this, kind of like in a Malazan book. So we have part 1, Sailing Towards Destiny. We get introduced to Malvius, one of my favorite characters. That was introduced just this book. He really steals the show. He's this sort of pirate captain who's not very strong or, you know, super battle savvy, but he is very intelligent, very cunning. We have his right-hand man, Dex, also known as Dexicos, and this black lady. I forget what their particular race in this world is called, but she's kind of also like, well, she starts off kind of just being, you know, sexual stuff for Malvius, but she quickly turns into so much more than that, which is really cool. And then, referring to my phone, Adazer asked and relayed, Malvius sought to eliminate all of his debts and to get himself out from under his domineering family's control. It's his father and his sister's husband who own these ships. He was to be his father's heir, but a dispute arose between them. He blames his sister, who has his father's ear. His father's disfavors put his prospects in doubt. The image of Aldon's father's disappointed face came to him. Adazar went on. Malvius went to great lengths to secure the ships and crews in secret. He mentions that his men, too, have sacrificed and risked much. He says that because of this failure, his life is forfeit, which led to his willingness to face the danger of meeting with you, my lord. The captain thought even a quick death by your hand to be preferable to facing his men, his family, and his creditors. So basically, you know, where we kind of left off with the last book, Valdon, Elaine, and the crew, they kind of, you know, come into this new world, and they befriend Malvius and end up joining this pirate gang, which they do for a considerable amount of time. Before I continue on with any spoilers, I will say that this is one of the aspects of the story where I felt this in of itself could have been a shorter novel. I feel instead of making this be 700 pages, we could have made these 2 books we could have made this trilogy maybe a quadrilogy, I don't know. But what we get of Malvius, what we get of Valdon and their relationship and their friendship is enough to feel things when we get to later sections of the plot. But how we dwelled on it, how we spent a little bit more time with this friendship, with these characters, the later direction the story goes could have had a powerful and potent effect on the plot. As it stands, you feel it, but not nearly as much as I feel you probably should. I feel the plot gets you to just believe that they're finally starting to become close friends before quickly dissolving that entire thread. I feel like they should have been true companions and friends longer than they actually were to make that land better. Now, in terms of time span in universe, They did spend a lot of time together, but in terms of us seeing that friendship develop into something, I feel it was a very short amount of time, especially for the amount of pages we had. So that's one of my few critiques of this book. But a critique of a series being, I wish there was more of this is not inherently a bad critique to have. It just means you're doing a great job. I wish you gave me more. Valdon and Melvius scene. I wrote my phone, so we'll see what that's all about. So this is when I think Malvius catches Valdon carving wood like he used to. And the hawk burned in the fire? Valdon frowned. Yes and no. Before the attack, my father came to me. He was angry that I cared only for finishing the hawk. He wished me to be training to fight. We argued. The bird broke. The hawk's wings flew into the hearth, fire, and burned. Malvius looked intrigued and yet puzzled. I tell you this because that was the day my life forever changed. Because the bird broke, I am made to understand. It is not the wooden piece that matters. He held up the seagull. It is the work that makes me who I am. He held up the knife. And there is always more work to be done. We must work so that we remember who we are. We must then trust when our hearts tell us that our lives have changed and listen to hear what is next for us. I will continue to work and listen. It is all that I can promise. He held out the seagull. Do you see my meaning? He gestured, and Malvius took it. For you, he added. Now I must find more work. We smiled. Malvius studied the bird. I believe I do see, he said. His eyes met Valdon's over the fire. This is really mine. A gift? Valdon nodded. Malvius struggled to stand. He held up the bird before him. Then please don't take offense when I do this. He snapped off one of the wings and tossed it into the fire. Valdon, momentarily relived the panic he felt that day and resisted the urge to reach for the wing as it burst into flame. He craned to meet the Helion's eyes, trying not to scowl. This is what you wished for my gift? What I wish is for our lives to now be forever changed. Before we met, my father tried to break me. You two thought my focus was not on the right things. Since you came along, I find I'm far from broken. My heart is telling me that what is next for my life includes having you in it. Malvius stowed the remainder of the bird in his belt pouch. I shall keep the rest to always remind me of the need to work and to listen. Do you see my meaning? I believe I do see, he repeated. The Hellion bent to retrieve his cup and the bottle. We offered a poor parting shot. Valdon shook his head. To our new lives, Malvius said, and raised his cup. Valdon raised his, and they both drank. May you sleep as deeply as one who has found his home again, my friend, Malvius said, and he turned and strode into the darkness. Again, beautiful, the beginning of a friendship. I just feel the friendship did not last long enough for later occurrences. Because after this, we get kind of a 2-year time jump. Malvius has named his new ship Gullwing in honor of Valdon, but Valdon kind of takes offense to this more so than feel like, oh yeah, man, awesome. But he just kind of keeps that to himself. We get a lot of Malvius's family lore in terms of what's been going on with his father and his sister and what that's all like. And then it also says, refer to my phone again. Get back, Malvius frowned. To live there? He threw a thumb over his shoulder to indicate the palace. No, that place is drafty. Most of the people who live up there are unpleasant. Valdon was trying to read him as night fell, and they moved through shadows and snatched of light. Malvius felt his stare. Seriously, my father loves a damn palace because it props up his ego. He loves the idea of looming over his domain. To do so requires a level of self-delusion. I've always hated that. My ideal home is aboard my own ship, on the open seas. These are my people. He smiled at the pedestrians coming and going from eateries and pubs. Here, down there. Malvius nodded downhill. All the more so when they joined my cruise. His partner wore a fond smile. Down there in the docks, that's the real Thracius. See, trade is the lifeblood of this city. My father never truly understood that. Not like I've come to. To him, the shipping trade is a necessary evil, but it's so much more. The Tiberians may be the law, but the real traitors truly run things here. The Tiberians are the Romans, basically. The Annex is a mere figurehead, and the current one never wanted to dirty his hands with the shrewd trade, let alone hold a tiller, put his way to the best tack. The old man actually hates sailing, if you can believe it. To me, those are the things that make life worth living. Voldon twisted to look back at the palace silhouetted in the night sky, windows twinkling of the city, almost like the stars that were starting to appear above it. Every man has his own ideals, I suppose, he said. We also deal with slavery, because of course this is analogous to the Roman Empire, so they have slaves, which is something that very much bothers Voldon. Whether Malvius is sincere or not, it is very logical, very much like in Star Trek. Because Voldon immediately wants to abolish this. He wants to end slavery. He wants to save the slaves right now, right here. But all that's going to do is get them arrested. Better or worse, whether Malvius is just saying it to appease Voldon, whether there's a part of him that actually believes it at the end of the day, Malvius makes the logical, rational sense. There's a confrontation with Legate soldiers because they're harassing Elaine, and Malvius bails them out. What I also found surprising is that Malvius seems genuinely in love with Neveka, which was really nice to see. Neveka and Elaine also seem really bond, which is really cool. Also, I said to kind of give a big boost to Von Roycroft here. I said, Malvius very much comes off as like the Tyrion Lannister of this series, and I really love Malvius by this point. So, as I said in my first book review, I very much felt like Voldon was teetering on villainy. Well, in this book, they're supposed to be doing this deal. Malvius is in charge, and this entire throat-cutting scene with Voldon, which comes straight out of like a villain monologue, but the only difference is he's our main character. And I'm like, oh, well, yep, I guess I was right. When Elaine goes to tell Voldon that she's pregnant. Sorry if you heard that. And you don't have to follow destiny. Basically, she tells him, we could just run away together. Be free. But that is not... Voldon does not take that well. They end their relationship kind of sour. We move on to Gaining Strength, which is part 2 of this book, which again, we have an 8-year gap since book 1. So book 1, there was a 2-year jump from the first book. So first book, 2 years pass during that whole section 1. We're now in the section 2, and it's been 8 years. So it has been a decade since the events of book 1, of like the very first book by Von Roycroft. First novel, I should say. That's not getting confused. Which again, there's some massive time jumps in this book, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's Vaughn's book to do as he so pleases. But my issue is there's so much time jumping in this book that as we get to a lot of things in this book particularly, I felt it, sure, but I would have felt it a lot more if we weren't just jumping ahead all this and we actually spent more time with these characters. But Urias is back, so that's pretty cool. And of course, this section of the book is only 6 years since the start of book 1. Or since the 2-year jump, I should say. Urias and Elaine, Bryn, the Unborn. Because Urias and Elaine are siblings. We also get introduced to Ligia, who is Malvius' sister. I have 2 phone notes. Oh boy. Alright. Maybe this time, but you're Viracus. You take them straight to the docks. The citizens of the city won't tolerate their carousing and brawling, sullying our markets and terrorizing our women. Do you hear me, Malvius? I'm speaking to you. He rounded on his father. How can I help but hear you? But it makes me wonder if you have ever heard me. Whether you approve of him or not, whether you dislike his race or his looks or his smell, Voldon is largely responsible for saving the city from poverty. The Tiberians all but threw us to the whim of the pirates. If not for these Teutonics, few Thracian ships would have made it to the eastern markets and back over the last 8 years. Voldon and his men kept us all sailing when no one else could. Without them, you and your city would be destitute, your precious markets and inns empty. Are you hearing me now, father? So this is the big thing. Voldon loses his patience. He attacks. He kills Malvius' father right in front of him. Later on, he goes and kills Neveka. Well, not him personally, but his men go and kill Neveka, the woman that Malvius fell in love with, and he vows ultimate and complete revenge on Voldon. Again, it's effective, it works, but it would have hit so much harder had we dedicated more time to that friendship and, frankly, that relationship. There's enough there for me to fill it, but I could have been devastated had we spent the proper time on them, and I personally just don't feel that we did. But again, if my worst criticism is that I wish we had more of your characters, then you're doing something right. But in this passage, he goes, if he survived, what would be left of his world? He wondered how he could have allowed himself to love Neveka, let alone to consider Voldon a friend. He learned so long ago, love and friendship only led to betrayal, to heartache. Just as when his mother had betrayed him as a boy by returning him to his father, then leaving him again, this time without him, just as his sister had betrayed him as a teen to go off with Tiberian soldiers and let them have their way with her, leaving him to deal with their father's spiraling bitterness and wrath. Just as his father later betrayed him as a man, spitefully snatching away his inheritance after all he had endured to earn it. His mind reeled, playing scenes from the past, unbidden. He recalled how many times Voldon had questioned him about the Tiberians. Malvius himself had taught Voldon their weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Now he was being punished for revealing his own weakness. He laid himself bare to a barbarian. How could he have been so desperate for the approval of such a man? The shame of it burned on his cheeks. He forced it down, coerced it to rage. Never again. If he survived, he would be strong. Those who'd done this would burn in humiliation on their way to death. Lygia couldn't escape. Her husband ends up dying, but she gets captured by Voldon's men. We learn that Vernius is Lygia's secret lover. Lygia promises to work with Voldon. We jump ahead to part 3, Imperial Aspirations. Malvius wants the Empire to destroy the Gotari. That's his ultimate big plan. He wants to make Voldon believe that all is well and good on his end with him and there's no hard feelings. And to encourage him to attack the Empire because he definitely believes the Empire will crush him. Bryn, who is the daughter of Elaine and Voldon, has a wonderful relationship with Urias in these sections. And then we skip ahead to book 4. I didn't have as much to say there. The Bringer of War. Amaga and Voldon get married. Amaga, who is Thedemir's child, there was a section of the book where they go back to their homeland, and Voldon has several scenes with Thedemir. And Thedemir, says that you'll never have my daughter, but his daughter runs off against his permission and ends up marrying Voldon. However, shortly after the marriage, Voldon cheats on her, and she vows to never let her son have anything to do with her father. Bryn asks Urias about Skalani history, and he gives her a pretty big overview of what's going on there, and it's really cool for her to hear about her lineage. They go to do this because they basically have this one city that they've been in control of for a while now. But again, the ambitions are wider. So they go to attack someplace else. There's a big battle. And, I haven't really mentioned them. But of course, Voldon's family comes back into the picture. And his brother, Eldavir, dies. And again, it works in terms of how I feel bad for Voldon, considering all he's done to make me hate him in this book. But in terms of Eldever, I mean, he was around, but there was not enough of him for me to, like, feel bad that him as an individual, as a soul, is missing. It's just more so what it does for other characters. Voldon's son is also born, and I have a few more quotes, and then we'll end it for today. No, wait, I'm sorry. Voldon leapt up and blocked her from rising. Forgive me, please. Gods, I hate this. This is not how this was supposed to go. How was what supposed to go? Any of it. He started pacing. Our relationship, my ascent, the war, all of it. All right, Bringer, how was it supposed to go then? He gestured at the map. We were supposed to win. The Empire was supposed to crumble. We've hardly had a clear victory, and I never imagined doing any of it without you at my side. I feel like all I've done is fail. I failed my father, my mother, our people. Worst of all, I failed you and our daughter. I even failed. He plopped back in his chair and swallowed hard. Those who loved me without asking anything in return. Elaine knew whose name he couldn't even speak. Gods. She'd known Eldevar since he was a little boy. He'd always been so buoyant, so cheery. Sure, he could be naive, but it was because he had been so committed, so positive, so loyal. Eldevar had always believed. It had been so pure, it almost made her wish she could have kept believing like that all the way through. It was hard to imagine him gone, to think of carrying on without him, shining brightly beside them. Eldevar's absence would make it hard for her to stay true to her duty by believing again now. She reached to pick up the carving. It was already finally detailed, poised to hunt. She wondered how long he'd been working on it. Even lions lose some fights. We both know that sometimes lions die. That doesn't mean the pride has failed. Voldon grabbed his cup, took a drink, stared into it. I knew. I knew my brother was in that fire, and I stayed on that wall. Till I was sure I could claim victory. I didn't go to him. I'm just saying, rather than focusing on destruction, this is near the end of the book, we should think about what our people have to offer. At its best, the beauty of the Kotari system lies in having wolves and lions lead together. Its prosperity and power combined, the coin and the sword. And the alliance with the Skalani is about shared benefit. Everything good in Dania stems from balance. No one ever says that about the Empire. All anyone in the Empire talks about is the corruption, the unfairness. Grandmother used to say Uranian won't destroy the world so much as remake it. She often spoke of it as a rebirth. Maybe that's why the leader born of the wolf and the lion will be the first among the Tatana to ascend. Maybe that's the sort of leader that can even change an empire. Maybe we should consider the change as being one that comes from within the empire as well as from without. If the empire really is so vast, so strong, so entrenched, maybe eternal upheaval is the only way such a thing could possibly begin. Maybe it's about rebuilding something better after it's been torn down. And so, there's a couple more things, but the second book primarily ends. Elaine, Voldon have a rocky relationship in this book. It is not complete. They're not romantic by the end of this book, but they do seem to have sort of healed a bit. Will that stay as we reach the conclusion of this series? I don't know. Bryn is also starting to come into her own. I imagine she will be kind of central in the next book. This kind of is building her up. And if there's any more time jumps, she'll probably be an adult by the time we end the series. But I really enjoy her. I really enjoy Urias. I didn't even mention Urias has this sort of relationship with the Canis, and seems like it's destined to not truly go anywhere, but they have some nice moments together. Malvius goes from one of my favorite characters to being a character just filled with vengeance, and which is also a negative, not good thing to have. And it is curious to see where Malvius will be by the end of the story, where the Empire will be by the end of the story, where Voldon will be by the end of the story, Elaine. We know Bryn survives because she's the one writing all these excerpts, right? So what happens to all these characters? Will it be happy? Will it be somewhere in the middle? The way things have been, I don't imagine Voldon will survive, whatever happens. Maybe he will. Maybe he'll go in exile. I don't know. I know Bryn will be central. Will Malvius find redemption, or will his revenge and anger and bloodlust leave him to be just as bad as the man he's mad at? I don't really know. What will happen to this expansive empire? Will it be reformed? Will it be changed? Will it be crippled down from the bottom? Or will it ultimately defeat the Gotari? And this will ultimately seem pointless. I don't expect Von Roycraft to pull a Baker, make the whole journey feel like a complete waste of time, but who knows? But I enjoyed it immensely. And I am really intrigued and interested to see how it all concludes. And despite my minor gripes, like I said, nothing about the narrative or the plot or the characters, anything about that was inherently bad at all. I quite enjoyed it. There's just some things I feel could have made this book go from great to absolutely phenomenal, almost perfection. And I feel those couple gripes do hold it back, but that's all entirely subjective. You might feel entirely different. But again, really enjoyed the book, and I can't wait to see Destiny's Doom and see how it all concludes. So until then, guys, I'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye.